All right, Shawn, let's knock it out of the park one more time.
Hello, this is the Never Heard of It podcast. I am Shawn Harwell, back again today to lead you into the year 1985, and I am joined from the future by my co-host and co-conscriptor.
Oh,
what is
man.
I don't even know what that means.
I'm not even sure, no.
What's your name?
But let's go with it. Let's not okay. Roll back on that. I'm Craig Moorhead, Craig the conscriptor, and me and Shawn are going to walk you through some more 1985 flicks today. But first, you probably found us by accident, and so let me tell you where you can find us on purpose. You can find us on Twitter at Never Podcast. You can find us at neverpodcast.com is our website. For goodness sake, you can find us on Facebook, the Never Heard of It podcast. And you can find us on Instagram, which I believe is NHOIT. That's Never Heard of IT podcast. And that's you can find cool pictures and reminders that stuff has come out, and we hope you do. And please, if you have anything to say about these movies or want to talk about movies that we haven't talked about yet, please let us know.
This would be a great name for a podcast about IT, wouldn't it?
It would. Kind of makes me feel like maybe somebody did do that.
Probably.
And their podcast is more popular. Yeah.
Impossible. But speaking of popular podcasts, I hope you have listened to the previous episode, because we teed up today's two movies that we're going to talk about, and this is a series of, next week's or the week after that. Anyway, both of them, I think we're going to end up talking about two more movies kind of in the same vein. But today we've got Rambo Missing in Action 2, Norris versus Stallone. We're going to get deep into it. But yeah, go check out that mini episode. It's 13 minutes long. It's real quick. It'll kind of like give you some introduction, some background on both of these two movies. And we'll do a little bit more of that today, but we want to get into a lot of plot, as much as there is.
Right. It's going to be a short show.
Yeah, and just our general thoughts and kind of looking at both of them and figuring out why, hey, in one corner we've got a huge Stallone box office gargantuan hit, number 2 movie of the year. In the other corner, we have a Chuck Norris movie. So with that in mind, thanks for joining us, and we'll jump in here with our machine guns blazing.
Pow.
Craig.
Yeah.
I think, it's appropriate to start with Stallone. He's probably the biggest actor of the year this year, although maybe you could make the case for Michael J. Fox between Back to the Future and Teen Wolf. I think money-wise, though, definitely in Stallone's favor. Let's talk about First Blood Part 1 for a second.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about that movie. It's possible I've never even seen it, all right? And I'm here to tell you I didn't watch it again before watching Rambo First Blood Part 2. What do you know of the Rambo, or what do you remember of the sort of Rambo character going into rewatching this first sequel here?
Well, I remember a good bit, actually, because as a kid, was a huge fan of First Blood, and I haven't watched it in a long time, but I feel like it was a pretty good movie. And I hesitate to say that because anything like that from the early 80s, the politics in it could be real bad. So I'm not gonna tell you I'm standing behind everything in it, but I remember it as being very good, and basically the idea being, John Rambo is kind of, somewhat fresh out of the Vietnam War. He's a vet just trying to make his way in the world. He's passing through some northwestern town, and the sheriff thinks he's a bum and says, "Stay out of town." And from there, you might say things snowball a little bit to the point where things are exploding by the end.
That's just natural, though.
Yeah, and I always remember the line from John Rambo in the thing when he's talking to Richard Crenna. What's Crenna's name in the movie?
Colonel Samuel Troutman.
Oh, Troutman. Okay. Yeah, so Troutman's, trying to talk him down and bring him in, so because he's worried that he's not really worried. What am I talking about? He knows Rambo's going to F up everybody in town, but he says, come on, Rambo, you got to, put down the gun and come in. And Rambo's like, they drew first blood, not me. And as a kid, I was like, well, now I know what first blood means. Like, this is one of those movies that explains the title. Unlike Goonies, yep. I'm looking at you, Goonies. But yeah, I mean, I just remember like it seemed to be shot really well. It doesn't seem to be as straightforward an action movie as Rambo does. Like the first one felt like it was almost a character piece action movie, whereas this is just like, give them some guns and let's grease up some chests because we're going into Nam. So, but you didn't remember anything from the first movie.
No, but I think that's a good place maybe to start then.
Absolutely.
Because, I watched this movie and thinking about it, and Stallone, and sort of, I think the kind of magnetic appeal of the guy is he does kind of have this side of him, and he has since day one, that is a natural underdog. There's just something about looking into that face that you feel pity for in some ways. And it makes so much sense to like put him into a character like that, and like what you're describing as the plot of the first Blood makes total sense. And I think, this is a guy that, it's like he feels like and looks like he's gone through hard times, and you want to root for him to succeed. Now, I do think, there's a bit of a disconnect from that then when he just suddenly, I mean, like, he straps in, and as soon as that knife comes out, like it's game on in this movie. And we'll get to, because we made body count predictions in the last episode, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But man, the killing does not stop in this movie, and he's pretty inventive about it.
Sure.
And in some ways, I think that's earned. I think it's justified in that, here's a vet and he's been through shit, and, life hasn't been easy or fair to him since then. And he's going back into this place with a very real and noble goal that is his own goal, not necessarily the mission's goal, of getting these POWs out of there, getting his fellow soldiers out of there at any cost, and even at the risk of his own life, certainly.
Right.
So I think it feels like, watching it again, it's like, yep, I get it. This is a total like Stallone thing. Like he's perfect for this kind of story in this era. Like it makes, and I felt somewhat relieved by that fact. Like I didn't want to watch this and think, what the hell were people thinking? Like what were we thinking? Making this guy the biggest box office draw of this year, of making him a household name. Yeah, Rocky's great, but that was in the 70s. It's been a while.
Right.
How did he turn into this thing, this like mindless killing machine? And I felt like that held up in a way. Like I still understand that. I will say overall, though, that said, I cannot believe this movie was the number 2 movie of the year. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Because of how violent it is, because of how like blatantly sort of patriotic it is, even though it's super critical of the government ultimately, and because of just how little story there is to this movie. I mean, that's the big thing to me, right?
Yeah.
Because you got a movie that's made $150 million at the box office. To me, that means, especially in 1985, it's not like, oh, everybody just went and saw it the first weekend and then we're like, yeah, it was okay, and didn't go. But people probably saw this multiple times. They definitely told their friends about this. It surely played a number of weekends, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to think of like what was the big thing? Like, okay, if I watch this movie in 1985, what is the scene that I'm going to come away from and be like, oh my God, you got to see freaking Rambo, dude. Like this one moment, And I don't know what that moment is. Like, do you sort of like agree or disagree with what I'm saying here? And B, is there a moment from this movie that you would be like, I'm sure people talked about that moment, and that's kind of what brought people to theaters and droves to see this movie?
I mean, I can't think of what brought people to the theater, but I mean, the one thing I kept thinking about was, and I realize it's just because we've time has passed, and I don't know, techniques have become better and all that kind of stuff, but it kind of looks and feels like a TV show a lot of the time. Like it's not anything that couldn't be done on TV, and probably done a little bit better now. But of course, I mean, it's 30 years ago. But no, I mean, I thought
I was going to say, I thought the transfer actually looks really good, especially compared, and I watched it on Amazon HD, but especially compared to, I watched the Chuck Norris Missing in Action 2 first, and then, obviously this movie we talked about, substantially higher budget. And I do think, looking at them side by side, this movie is clearly the better looking movie. Yeah. That said, you could easily, this could be done in 1 week on HBO, and on to the next step, like hands, no brainer. Yeah.
Well, and even with more style, I mean, there's not really a strong visual style to it. Like, it's just, which is not really a problem, but it's like, here's the story. Like, here it is. Yeah. We're not going to get like tons of interesting angles or interesting lighting. It's just like, it's I don't know. It's definitely removed from just being a documentary, but but regardless, I mean, there is the stuff that's like the bit where he pops out of the mud to grab a guy. I don't know. It's like I kind of feel like we've seen so much more intricate and especially now, so much just years of really, really heavily choreographed action. Yep. That this stuff, it does not get your pulse going. Let me give an example. Yeah.
Early on in the movie, and when we say story, like, it's literally like what I said. Like, he's taken out of a rock quarry where he's breaking rocks all day by troutmen, and offered the opportunity to go into the jungle and complete a mission. He's supposed to go just photograph a supposed POW camp. And, obviously he sees people there, and that's all it takes. He's going to get everybody out and kill everybody within the area. That's pretty much the plot. I mean, that's basically all you need to know, right? Yeah. But early on, when they're going to do the drop-off into the jungle, Stallone is in a plane. They're flying overhead. He's supposed to jump out. They have that line that connects them to the plane so they don't just fall out, but then they're supposed to, clip out, launch parachutes there. He gets somehow kind of caught, like his line that's connecting him to the plane gets stuck or something, and he's basically being, hung on the side of this plane. They're worried about the turbulence going to rip him apart. They can't get the thing to break free. So yes, but like that sequence today, I feel like would be 1,000 times more tense. Hopefully, right? Yeah. There's no excuse not for that, because like it's exactly like what you said, like. It's just kind of shot in a way that I don't think you ever see his face. Yeah. There's no like, I don't know. There's just no like building of tension there. So it's like, okay, he's hanging from a plane. I'm pretty sure he's not going to die, because then there's no rest of the movie. Right. But even with like that, it's like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief because I know how movies work, but just give me a little visual something. Like to me, like that was a key area early on where exactly what you're talking about. Stylistically, it's a holdover from a different era.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else about this movie maybe let you down or led you think that it felt TV-esque?
Well, it was kind of the thing. Again, there's a bit where I believe it's after his woman. For a while, he has a woman sort of sidekick with him who's helping him do this, and she apparently catches feelings for him, and of course, And one second after he promises to take her to Thailand, I believe, and where they will be very happy, and she kisses him, she is absolutely just gunned down, just done, dead. Yeah. And then he just goes on a rampage, but a Rambo Rampage or a Ramboge is not there. Nice. There's no logic to it.
No.
I was talking last time about how it felt kind of slasherish, and wherein it's just like, so all these soldiers are coming for him, and you'll cut to this set piece where, as we were just talking about, Rambo comes out of mud. He somehow covers himself in mud and is just in a place where a soldier walks up and stops right in front of him, and then he pops out and stabs a guy. And the next thing you know, he's in a tree. And then the next thing you know, he's over there,
Yeah.
And today, I feel like you would not get away with that. You could do it.
No.
But people would not like you for it. Now it has to at least have you can have people clearly. I mean, there's Fast and Furious, which I love those movies, and everything that happens to them is completely impossible, but they're just possible enough. They're stupid impossible, but they're just possible enough. If you really made it impossible, it wouldn't be any fun. Of course, people can't combat a submarine in cars.
It's tough to drive on a submarine. Yeah, it's true,
exactly.
yeah.
But it's done just possibly enough. So, so that was just another bit that I didn't like. But
well, you know what that whole sequence to me felt like? It absolutely felt like somebody said, just give me 10 cool things Rambo can do to hide and kill people.
Right.
Okay? Just take an hour, just put them in a list. Doesn't matter. Don't even worry about plot scene. Doesn't matter. I don't even care if it's physically possible for him to do these things. We're going to shoot him. It's going to be awesome. We'll put it in the trailer. There's your movie. Yeah. And some of that stuff, I think, probably worked on audiences, absolutely. At least. I mean, that is the kind of stuff that when you think about it, it's him coming out of the mud, I'm like, that is the one sort of probably moment or certainly shot that I'll remember from this movie. And I think it probably is something that was buried somewhere in my memory banks as well, because when I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, badass. It definitely was a little bit oh yeah, I remember that, even though I haven't seen this movie, I don't think. But I think we should definitely talk for a second about that woman that you mentioned, which I didn't realize until just looking at the IMDb page here. The character's name is Ko, I guess. I don't know. That was lost on me. Actress is Julia Nixon. And I don't want to pick on her. I think the romance element in that thing was absolutely absurd and ridiculous.
Of course.
mean, they spend so little time together. There is no circumstance in which they would have developed feelings, given what we're seeing on screen.
Right.
Maybe there was a longer cut where it did make sense. It does not in this current cut.
Yeah.
Okay. You can put that aside. Her getting shot, that was a surprise that worked okay for me, because I was just like, it's if these people walk off in the sunset together, I'm done with this movie, right? And so I was like, oh, okay, she got shot. Didn't see that coming exactly. Her broken English is so atrocious in this movie that it is maybe to me the single most thing about this movie that will date it. Especially, I would say, 20 years from now. It's so bad. I just wrote down, she says, what you want? Still war here. I mean, it's things like that. They're just leaving out one verb or something. And why? It was hard to watch. It was honestly hard to watch. Fortunately, she's not in the movie that much.
Right.
Another thing that I think is very kind of a key component of maybe this era that's connected to this is that little emerald necklace, right? Which she's wearing, and I don't think she gives to him, right? It's just he takes it from her off her body when she is shot, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I mean, just go Google it. If you don't remember, you'll see 1,000 pictures of Stallone as Rambo wearing this little emerald necklace, which it looks like a choker on him.
Yeah, it barely fits around his masculine neck.
And so, like, you get that moment at the end when he's just blowing people away, and there's like a slow mo shot, and it's just like the little emerald is like jiggling back and forth, and like that's all I could look at was this little this little necklace thing jiggling back and forth on this like huge beefcake of a guy. And so, like, to me, it's like I've always kind of like hated like attaching sentimentality to an object that is otherwise meaningless. Yeah. And this is like they didn't do too much of that, but just seeing it on him was just kind of ridiculous.
Yes.
So there's that. But I did want to get back a little bit to your point about the slasher thing. I think that's an interesting comparison because I think if there's one key difference between this movie and the Chuck Norris movie is that I don't think we get to know anybody else in this movie, really. We don't know the POWs. We don't know the enemy, really. Like, there's no personality to them whatsoever.
No.
And because of that, I think it only adds to that feeling of it's like, okay, I'm just watching him shoot stuff. I don't really feel anything for that. And it gets to the point of ridiculousness that there was a moment at the end where I'm like, he's blowing up everything in this camp, and there are still POWs in one of the buildings.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know which building they're in. Does he? I mean,
yeah.
Like, he was only there, like, he didn't draw like a map of the place. He was only there for like 5-10 minutes to talk, to see them and try to get them out of there. I'm like, it doesn't seem like he's being that careful that he won't blow them up in the process of what he's doing. I mean,
absolutely
it's absurd.
Not. Yeah.
It's so absurd to think about. Again, versus the Norris thing, it's like, it's much more restrained, I guess, in that sense. Even though obviously, you got explosions, you got a lot of death, but it felt a little more like, okay, this is a real thing. We're not just supposed to be drawn in and titillated by a fireball. We're actually supposed to care and like slightly pay attention to this story a little bit, aside from just the ass kicking.
Right.
That said, I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of torn about. I do think, we talked about the Siskel and Ebert review last week. This movie is still enjoyable to watch, I think, right? And it's short.
Well, exactly. It's super quick. I feel like you always know where you are in the story, as far as just you're like, like that was the first third. All right, that's the halfway mark. Here we are in the last third. It never stops moving. I mean, the worst it gets is you get some corny lines you can laugh at, but otherwise, I mean, it's fun to watch.
Do you have a sense of what James Cameron contributed? Because the other component that we haven't really talked about to this movie is definitely the sort of military mercenary aspect of it all,
right?
And there's Colonel Troutman, who I think is the sort of the father figure sort of good guy. And then there's this whole other crew led by Charles Napier, and you've got Martin Cove in there. And it's ultimately revealed that, basically he was sent in the jungle to give them proof, which I'd still kind of like, you can help me with this because. Yeah. And I feel like I felt Cameron's touches on all of that stuff, all that military, talk and stuff.
Yeah.
But okay. Like, am I to understand that he was sent into the jungle to take photos of an empty camp because the U.S. is basically reneging on promises to pay reparations to Vietnam and Cambodia because they... it made sense when I was watching it. It's because of the POWs or... God, see? I don't. Do you tell me? Help me out here. Well, do you understand that plot?
There are parts that I don't understand. So he gets sent into the jungle, and he has a contact in the jungle who turns out to be this woman, right? That's his contact.
Which even that was a little confusing to me because she was working with some pirates.
Yeah.
And then I just like, it's not like exactly she's a complete ally, you know?
And he was about to kill her. So it's like,
that's right.
Couldn't you guys like let him know who he's going to meet in the jungle? But yeah, so I mean, but this is a real thing and somewhat of a conspiracy theory or not. I'm not sure, but around the time these two movies popped up, like people believed that our government was hiding the fact that there were POWs over there, and so like this all plays into it, and one of the conspiracy theories was that they have people go over and just photograph empty camps and come back and say, see, there's nothing there, so you don't have to worry about it. So so they sent him in. There were people there anyway, which I guess is kind of shabby storytelling. But to go back to what you were asking about the James Cameron script, see, to me, like, yeah, exactly. I felt like some of the military talk was his. I was almost positive that the woman would have been his. The character, but I feel like maybe that's not true because originally, apparently, he wrote this sort of techie sidekick for him for Rambo that Stallone didn't like. But here's a quote from Stallone talking about the script. He says, "I think that James Cameron is a brilliant talent, but I thought the politics were important." So apparently, Cameron didn't put politics in the script. No. Such as a right-wing stance coming from Troutman and his nemesis Murdoch, contrasted by Rambo's obvious neutrality, which I believe is explained in Rambo's final speech. I realize his speech at the end may have caused millions of viewers to burst veins in their eyeballs by rolling them excessively. All right, Stallone. But the sentiment stated was conveyed to me by many veterans. Also, in his original draft, it took nearly 30 to 40 pages to have any action initiated, which might have been good.
I'll say this. I clocked it. Nobody dies in this movie until 35 minutes in, so it's still... it's pretty tame. I think you get that scene on the plane that we talked about, him jumping out, is considerably earlier than that. So, there's a little bit of action and tension. But, still a bit of a slow burn there.
But yeah, so 30 to 40 pages before there was any action, and Rambo was partnered with a techie sidekick. So it was more than just politics that were put into the script. There was also a simpler storyline. If James Cameron says anything more than that, then he realizes he's now doing the backstroke badly in a pool of lies.
Wow.
That is our Stallone quote. So
from Stallone.
Yeah, so seemed like there was some beef there, and it sounds like Stallone is saying... wait a second. So Stallone says that James Cameron's script had a simpler storyline? How much simpler could it have been?
Yeah, I fail to grasp how you could shave any depth off of what's already there. Still have anything to hang your hat on.
Yeah, well, okay, so, yeah. So does that cover that? I think so. I think the plot makes enough sense. You can't really poke too many holes in it there.
No, and like even the stuff that I'm a little confused about. I mean, there's some talk about reparations, and like it did make sense within the context of that scene.
Right.
Although I didn't know anything about that. I didn't mind Stallone's speech at the end. In fact, I was frankly grateful for it because it is the first time in the entire movie that he strings more than two sentences together.
Yeah.
Literally. And you talked about that a little bit when we were kind of like predicting, who's got the best one-liners. It's like, well, are there any one-liners in Rambo? And by God, you're pretty much right. I mean, I think Troutman actually probably has the best lines in the movie, and maybe the Charles Napier Murdoch character. But I don't know. Like politically, it is kind of interesting to watch this thing because, I don't want to drag us too far down this road, but it was interesting to watch this in the context of knowing that our current president has publicly stated that he prefers soldiers who don't get captured in reference to John McCain's POW experience. And I was reminded a bit that, holy cow, I think like the national sentiment towards all of that, just towards veterans of this war perhaps, has really changed, I mean, can you imagine him saying that in 85? Like,
oh no,
again, a number 2 movie in America here, and this is a super strong, and same with the Norris movie, statement about the way we left that war. You know, if you want to look at it politically, and how we have not done justice to the guys that fought there, and I don't know. Like, to me, it's still, you know, the worst bits of just unwarranted and ridiculous, jingoism, patriotism stuff in this movie is probably the closing song by Frank Stallone.
Oh jeez,
because it is god awful. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to knock it unless if it's on your like playlist.
It's no
loop. Okay.
No,
but it's so bad. It's a bad song to begin with, just from a musical standpoint, and then the lyrics are just so on the nose and over the top, and it comes on the heels of what I thought again was, it's not the best written speech in the world, obviously, but I thought Stallone delivered it okay, and like again, I was kind of happy to hear him, sound off in any manner, but boy, that song just kind of removes you from the movie, in my opinion, and feels extremely dated.
Well, what's kind of funny about that, and you're absolutely right about the song, and I also did not really mind the I mean, it's not even a speech, it's like 3 lines.
No, yeah, exactly, that constitutes a speech in this movie.
It was kind of nice to get. It was also kind of nice to get that point of view, and just
you gotta have it
in a way, bringing Rambo down to the point of like I'm just here for the humans that are involved. Like, that's why I'm here. I'm not here because of who's president and shit like that. So, but it is interesting to note that like First Blood, again as I remember it, First Blood is not an over the top movie. And I think it also ends with some kind of a speech, but I don't remember it ever being like. I feel like Rambo First Blood Part 2 is the movie that got parodied, right? Like, Weird Al did
Shots, right?
Hot Shots did it. Nothing in First Blood is parodied. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing funny to go at over here. But Rambo walking out of that place after he shot all those computers, and he is just dripping in oil. And just, I mean, it's just a shot of like, here are
he's
his
sweating
abs.
from the word go. I mean, just from the word go, he is sweating. Yeah.
It's just, there's so much about it that's too funny. And like if somebody could totally do a gritty version of this, and it might come off a little better. Like it might just, it might not have those bits where it's just like, oh, come on. And it kind of brings up again, when we're talking about the action, another part that I forgot about that was hilarious to me. Like, I feel like it was almost a parody in and of itself, is when Stallone is running from the helicopter that has a bomb on it.
Yeah.
And they drop a bomb as Stallone dives like down a waterfall. And the bomb like goes all the way to the bottom of the waterfall, and like I think hits a rock or something at the bottom of the waterfall.
It looks like it exploded like in 12 different places.
And then when it explodes, there's fire up the entire every level of that waterfall. Just fire erupts from it.
They blew up a waterfall. It's ridiculous.
And I was like, guys, I don't know. Again, 30 years ago, 13-year-old me would have been like, oh yeah, totally. But now I feel like anybody watching that would be like, dudes, that's a joke. Two big moments for me that on this note that I think are ripe for parody, and one in particular I'm making a request to the internet nerds. The first one though is there's a moment where I think after he's dropped into the jungle and before he meets Ko, where he's like slipping and sliding out of place, sneaking around, and he's like looking one direction, and you get the sort of like blurred background shot of a snake dropping, and he turns on a dime and grabs the snake by the head and stares at it.
and then lets it go.
Yeah.
What was that? Like, they just like came to a mutual truce between man and animal. It was like, I just like died laughing. I was like, that is not what I expected. Just grab that snake and throw it in the woods. Like, that to me would have made more sense. Number 2, and this is the one that I'm making an official request here. It is when he shoots up the computers in Murdoch, because ultimately Murdoch is sort of the bureaucratic villain of this movie, right? And you find out that he's not on the level, not a great guy. And even that was interesting too, because it felt like everybody he worked with was completely stoked that they saved all these POWs. Anyway, when Stallone comes in there and shoots up that guy's office with a machine gun, it felt like it's maybe like half a minute to like 3/4 of a minute of just nothing but bullets, right?
Yeah.
Machine gun. But I was watching, I was like, I want to see like a 4-hour cut of that. Just somebody just loop that for like 2 hours, or give me a good 30 minutes and I will be so like, I would watch that all day long. It is the stupidest thing, but the best thing also at the same time. And then I think it was right after that, and maybe we should talk about this a little bit. I think you do get the line, "Mission accomplished," from Stallone, And that to me was like the one sort of cheesy line that he had.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a moment earlier on where he's like, always believed the mind is the best weapon. But his delivery again is like, he's so sullen, like in the beginning of this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like it just doesn't come across as machismo. It comes across as like, well, this is sort of just like what this blue collar dude kind of thinks. And yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, all this stuff, it's an interesting thing. It's a really interesting thing to look at and think about in terms of audience success and like the time of it and how fresh I think the war was in the minds, and yet seeing it kind of, I don't want to say completely exploited, but turned into this type of action thing versus something like Platoon or Full Metal Jacket or those kind of movies. It definitely, I don't know. I would need to do more research, but it feels like it's like this is definitely the prototype for that kind of movie. Like it set the bar for that kind of thing.
I would agree, and the other thing I was wondering, just in terms of how popular it was, at the time. I mean, again, so much of it seems so goofy now, and it is kind of like, are they exploiting like the plight of like these poor guys who are over there? But
I don't think so. I mean, I don't, beyond, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I guess my thing is, at this point, it's 10 years after we got out of Vietnam. I mean, they planned to release it on the 10th anniversary of like when everybody pulled out. And so, yeah, my feeling was this cathartic for enough people that like going and seeing like somebody go in there and just, blow away all these like bureaucrats and all this stuff, and like all these people who are they're just trying to like push numbers around, and they don't really care about the humans involved. Now here's a guy who's going to go in. He doesn't care what anybody tells him. He's going to go in and bring those guys back. Like, is that, for someone who like watched all this stuff happening and just all this horror, is that a cathartic thing for you? And so, yeah, of course, like maybe you go and see that a few times because that just feels good.
I had the same kind of thought in thinking of it as sort of like historical fantasy, wish fulfillment kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And also drawing a line to something like this and Inglourious Bastards, and kind of like what Tarantino is doing. Yeah, Django Unchained probably too. It's interesting. I kind of wondered the same thing as sort of like you get a little bit of distance. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get a little bit of space to do something like that and not have it completely blow up in your face, Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see, like, I don't know that that's been done yet for, like, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Right.
Maybe it has. I don't know if maybe American Sniper. Well, I don't know. that's a bit more nuanced than that. But I don't know. Maybe there's one that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, maybe if anybody out there is listening, is there sort of like a modern equivalent to Rambo for the wars that we unfortunately still find ourselves in?
It's a good question. Yeah, I feel like it really hasn't been.
Yeah.
But yeah. If anybody has a suggestion, let us know.
Well, I do think maybe it's a good time to switch to talking about Missing in Action too, because this idea of the 10th anniversary actually is featured in the opening of this movie. It kind of starts out a little bit in the past where, you're in the war itself and there's an accident and the helicopter goes down. Well, they had to abandon the helicopter and you have those great freeze frames as each character is jumping out. Love it.
Yeah.
And the last one out, of course, is Norris, who's taken over, the pilot duties. And then you sort of like cut to what clearly, in my copy on Tubi TV, looked like straight up VHS for this segment anyway. It was news footage of, the unknown soldier, the sort of celebration. Well, it's not celebration. Jesus, that's the exact wrong word for the funeral that they held in honor of the POWs and the missing in action soldiers in Vietnam, with Reagan clearly at the forefront. And then you go back to the jungle. And I thought there was a really interesting structure to this movie, especially looking at it side by side with Rambo. It's like, oh, okay, here's kind of what they are talking about in Rambo, and then we actually get to see it a little bit in this Chuck Norris movie. That said, before we go too much further with that, I mean, this movie, again, the biggest difference here is these guys are in the POW camp, Norris included, and they've been there for 10 years, and there's really nobody coming to rescue them. It's a matter of how are they going to get out. And the movie does a very, good job, or at least it spends a ton of real estate on the side of the people that have captured them and are holding them captive. And that is Colonel Yin, played by Soon-Tek. Again, always, forgive my pronunciation. And then sort of like the guys that work underneath him. And he's a bastard. He is a torturous, manipulative, sadistic dude holding them captive. Claims he will let them go as soon as Braddock confesses to war crimes. And he's an American. He's not going to do that. He's Chuck Norris, by God. And that, I mean, that's kind of all I think you really need to know. I was sort of stunned by how similar this movie is, plot-wise at least, to Rescue Dawn, the Werner Herzog movie with Christian Bale. Which I love that movie, but it's a very, very similar story.
Yeah.
So if you've seen that and you haven't seen Missing in Action 2, there you go. Craig, talk to me. Yeah, talk to me a little bit, because you did some research on this, and we discussed it a little bit last time, but I had not seen the movie. And now that I have, I'm completely flabbergasted by the fact that they shot these two Missing in Action movies back to back, and that they intended for number 2 to originally come out as number 1, which makes total sense. Yep. So, what the hell is the first Missing in Action about? Do you know?
Well, the first Missing in Action is basically Rambo First Blood Part 2, as I remember.
There you go. Okay.
Like, it's essentially he's going back to get more POWs. And, yeah.
Which is crazy, because that came out the year before this, obviously.
Exactly. And I think I said last time there was some mention of Missing in Action being based on the script for First Blood Part 2, which
right.
Cameron was writing. Yeah, so I mean, it's too bad we can't watch movies from other years, because it would be interesting to go back and watch that one now. Yeah, and just see, like, I mean, did they basically make Cameron's Rambo First Blood Part 2? That's the thing I'm really trying to figure out now. Is like how much inspiration did they take from it?
Well, and the ultimate salt in the wound is that I'm sure Rambo did millions and millions of more business than Missing in Action 1. I will say that the nice thing about all of this is that, like me, I could sit down and watch this movie, and it didn't matter that I hadn't seen the first one, because none of that stuff I think is really that relevant. I have to imagine. No. I mean, there's nothing that I feel like I was missing out on or needed to know about this guy or the situation that he's in. So I did appreciate that. What did you think about this movie overall?
Well, thinking about both of these movies together. Now, Chuck Norris is not a good actor. I do feel like Stallone. Yeah.
No argument there. I mean, like,
I don't think he would even tell you that he's a good actor. I mean, he is not. He's not good.
Nope.
So Stallone definitely edges him out acting wise. Mm-hmm. Shawn,
let me just say one thing on that note too. I was surprised that not only did I think Stallone edged him out completely under any sort of delivery of anything I would call human emotion, which is saying something because it's not like that. I think it's like Stallone is the greatest actor of all time,
right?
But in the action stuff, I don't know if it's just the way we talked about. Like, I don't think there's anything like really stylistically, visually helping Stallone look good in those moments that the filmmaking was doing. But in Missing in Action 2, it's like at times it just felt like Chuck Norris was moving in slow motion when he was like fighting people. Like and somehow, like some ways it was worse. And like I did not expect. I thought, he's Chuck Norris. Like, if nothing else, he cannot give line readings, but he's gonna kick some ass, and that's gonna be awesome. And it kind of wasn't.
No. Well, again, it goes back to that choreography thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Where now, because you're just waiting for the Chuck Norris fist fight at the end.
Oh yeah.
And I mean that fight was embarrassing, but it kind of felt like
satisfying.
Well, guys, we don't really have a combat guy on set today, so let's just do some easy rolls, few light kicks, and then the guy's dead. Whereas today, it would be like super intense. God. Yeah. But that being said, Shawn, would you disagree with me if I said that I think Missing in Action 2, story-wise, tends to be a little more interesting than Rambo?
Craig, not only will I not disagree, I will go on record saying I genuinely liked this movie and would watch it again, and story-wise think it's 1,000 times better than Rambo. I should give one disclosure though. I started watching this movie and fell asleep and woke up and thought, I kind of get the gist of what's going on. I'll go back and rewatch like the middle of it. But then I was still sleepy and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to just start it over from scratch. And so I did. I sat down with it again, was fully attentive, and really locked into it and realized just how much I actually missed in the middle. I mean, there's a ton of
stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, like the Australian guy who claims to be there as part of, this Federation crew looking for POWs and all this stuff. I missed
basically
all
a Rambo.
Of that. Yeah, and it's a great sequence. But no, I think there's some very bad line delivery and some very bad lines. There's not great choreography, obviously, but I got caught up in the story of this movie. I did, I admittedly did, and I think it's just one of those like basic. To me, I was thinking about it's like it almost functions like a prison movie,
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what it is. But even like something like, I'm not saying a Shawshank, but it has some of those elements of it. Yeah, where you got guys being asked to sacrifice something, because or just to hang on to this belief that they're going to get out of there, and that they're not willing to sacrifice their sort of like morals, and they're not letting this defeat them. And, it's complex. You got guys who this character played by Stephen Williams, Nestor, who was the captain, who's basically sold out to Colonel Yin so that he doesn't get tortured, and like you can understand that from a certain point of view. but also you can understand why that would completely drive a wedge between him and his fellow soldiers. And like here's a guy saying, "Guys, the war is over. Nobody's coming for us. The only way we're getting out of here, possibly, is if Chuck Norris confesses. Just do it. Let's get out of here. Let's go home. You got a guy here who hasn't even seen his damn kid, since he was born. And like, God knows what's happened in the world. Now, obviously, you can sit here and say, well, okay, yeah, how are you going to get out of there? Should you trust, the guy that's held you captive for 10 years? Obviously not. But that said, it's like I felt like there was enough there that to me felt like natural human actions and reactions and experience. That
it didn't make Stephen Williams the most evil guy in the world.
No,
you could
not
see
at all.
the pragmatism in it. It's just like, just tell him that so we can go, because no one cares about us. Let's just go.
Yeah. And like, to me, in some ways, that delivers that message better than what Rambo did. We talked about, it's like, I like that little speech at the end. But to me, it's like, no, here in this movie, you get to see it. You really get to experience. And, the bad guys are bad. Like, you want that dude to die at the end of this thing. And I think, actually, that's why that fight at the end is so anticlimactic, because it is like, the choreography just really lets it down, because you want this guy to get his ass kicked so bad. Yeah. But that said, totally agree. It's a better movie than Rambo. And didn't make a fraction of the money.
Didn't make a fraction of the money, but I mean, it profited beautifully.
Sure.
I mean, it made 5 times what it cost, and I guess Rambo did too. But the other thing I kept thinking about this movie, because all of what you said is exactly right, and I think kind of what also helps it is, with Rambo, he's going in to save those guys and kill those guys, whereas with these guys, like, they're the ones that need to be saved. Like,
they got to save themselves.
Yeah. Even as ham-fisted as some of their character stories are, like their backstories are, and they're pretty. I mean, you can tell you're being teed up, but it's just like, but you get to know them, and their struggle is that they are the ones they're not waiting for someone to come save them. They have to save themselves, and like, So honestly, it was just more entertaining. There's just more going on. It felt like. Yeah.
Now, that said, I do think, I don't want to paint the picture that this is like some sort of like highfalutin drama by any means, because there is some amazing action and deaths in this movie and reactions and stuff. I mean, very early on, you kind of get, I think it's actually in the opening speech from Colonel Yin, which is an amazing speech where he talks about, they've been forgotten by a nation the rest of the world reviles, and he's like huge delivery. Mm-hmm. But one of the, and he mentions, like, nobody's escaped from this camp. Nobody ever will. The only way you're getting out is if Braddock confesses. But then, of course, the next scene, one of the guys tries to escape, right? And so he runs off, and there's, they've laid the groundwork. You're surrounded by cliffs. There's a bridge that nobody's getting across.
There are booby traps everywhere.
Booby traps everywhere. But the one soldier makes it to the bridge. And then there's just a dude on the other end of the bridge, which, I don't know. I mean, maybe they've just had guys on the other side of this bridge for 10 years with flamethrowers, but he's there with a flamethrower. And he lights that guy up. And Craig, like, when that body, which obviously it's just, just a mannequin or something, a dummy that falls off the bridge, it is the best, most satisfying thing in the world. Well, it hits like 12 different things on the way down, and it just looks brutal. And there's so many moments like that. Where, I mean, to me, where Rambo kind of veers on the edge of parody by just the sheer scope of it, and it felt like, they're just throwing their money at the screen to get these big explosions. I actually think, some of the action in this holds up better, because it still feels like, oh, holy shit, like that, I shouldn't be watching this. This is like unreal. Like that had to hurt. That kind of stuff, which I love. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, and I think they, with the small budget, they kind of want to get their production value out of that kind of stuff. Like just the little stuff. And, well, we can throw a dummy that's on fire over this thing. Like, that'll look great. And we can put a bag around Chuck Norris's head with a dead rat in it that he has to have in his mouth when it comes out. But just going back to the flamethrower bridge thing, that bridge is made out of like rope and wood.
It's dangerous, yeah.
Why are you shooting a flamethrower at anything on that thing? You're not going to have a bridge.
You're going to have to rebuild that bridge a couple times, depending on how many people you want to flamethrow. But that's
somehow.
they got time on their hands, so that's what they were willing to take that risk.
There's weaving bridges.
Yeah, we should also mention, like, it becomes revealed that actually this camp, I think, is sort of a front for a, are they growing opium or poppy or something? Yeah, okay. So it basically, like, that's why he's keeping them. He's using them as slave labor to front some sort of drug op.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's why, you do have guards hanging out doing nothing for years just in case somebody wants to go across a bridge and you got a flamethrower. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many things like that. And then at the same time, you get this great hand-to-hand fist fight between Chuck Norris and Stephen Williams, Braddock versus Nestor, the guy that sold out to Colonel Yin.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's as simple as it could be. It's staged very cleanly and just blankly.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like, that fight has like impact, I think,
Yeah.
It's tough to watch, like, after a while, because Braddock is just letting him hit him, and then, he does ultimately fight back, but it's just like, oh God, like, it's one of those things where I felt like there's an example where maybe the lack of a budget created a moment, and it's a good moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's a good, because maybe they didn't even think, like, in Rambo, I don't know, I don't remember a single, like, sort of like any kind of hand-to-hand moment that lasted more than 10 seconds, and he killed a guy, It's breaking guys' necks left and right. And like here, it's like, this isn't a fight that's going to end in death, but they're going to beat the crap out of each other. And you got to sit here and watch this, and like, you feel the pain of it. So I don't know. I appreciated all that stuff. The Rat in the Hood thing was fantastic. I loved that. Nice little visual thing where you get a little bit of blood on the hood and you don't know what's going on underneath.
And the story is that was a real dead rat.
Really?
Yeah. That they had a fake rat that didn't look real enough, and Chuck said, "We'll just kill a rat, and I'll just put it in my mouth."
Man,
so
the
Chuck
legend of this guy just continues to grow, does.
Oh boy.
I do think it's interesting, and we talked when we did our episode on Goonies and Daryl and Explorers about the things that kind of make these movies 1985, just little things. Here, I think we have two instances of leeches, which I think is a total 80s thing, between this and Stand By Me. Both of these guys end up with leeches on them. It's a little more prominent, I think, in Rambo because they use a knife to like flick them off. And here's I'm not even really convinced those were leeches. They kind of look like just like slugs that were on him probably, and they very easily fall off. But that said, I was like, oh yeah, leeches. It's kind of nice seeing leeches in a movie. It's a good way to make your skin crawl,
Yeah.
Let's talk about that Australian guy though, which I can't find the actor right in front of me. But I thought that was a really nice moment for the middle act of this movie. You got a guy who just sort of wanders into this camp, and he's got a camera. He's wearing very short shorts. He's Australian, and it just the way that they played that was like, he was like friendly, it felt like he was coming in just saying, well, this is just a negotiation. Like, this is a matter of fact. There's a honing beacon outside the jungle, and if I go signal it, they'll know not to come immediately. But if I don't, they're going to come looking for me, and they're going to come with guns.
Yeah.
It's basically like, you got these POWs, you got to let them go. The war's over. If you don't, things could be very bad for you. Why don't you do the right thing? Let them go. And boy, I thought all that stuff was interesting. It added like a nice little boost in the middle of the second act. And then, oh boy, Craig, what happened to that poor guy?
So it's set up a little earlier in the movie that one of their tortures is to say they're going to like shoot a guy in the head and put a gun to their head and just sort of do some dry clicks and let them go. Which is super cool, super nice, super funny.
Very Deer Hunter-esque.
Yeah, and so they basically do the same thing to him, right? Like, they're just going to shoot him. He doesn't have a way out of it. Mm-hmm. As I remember. Like, there's nothing he can say that will, like, get him out of it.
Nope.
Aside from maybe Braddock, confessing. And so somebody says, hey, don't worry, it's just a trick. Like, there are no bullets in the gun or something. Yeah. And he says something like, oh, yeah, what a great sense of humor. And they pull the trigger. And
oh man.
And yeah, there's quite a death face to see here.
Yes.
A bullet goes out one side of his head.
Slow-mo.
And I mean, a good 2 seconds later, he reacts to it. His eyes pop open wide. Ooh, yeah.
Which I don't know that I'd be curious to know the science of whether or not that's possible.
I'm pretty sure your lights just go out. As far as I know, you just drop to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, as far as a movie moment, I was like, oh my God. Like,
it was a big one.
Yeah. Like that is a thing that if I saw this movie by myself in 1985, I would have absolutely like, you guys have to see this movie. Come, I'm putting it on right now. Wait till you get to this moment. Like crazy. Like I just, I didn't see it coming. I should have, but, man, they sold that well, and that's a good time for a little stylistic choice of slow-mo there, because that just continued to punch me in my gut.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, there's a couple little things that I think they could have helped me out a little bit story-wise. Mm-hmm. Just kind of, bring it on home. There's a moment where Chuck Norris finally kind of breaks free. He escapes. I don't remember exactly how it happened. Doesn't really matter. Throughout the movie, though, he's been wearing shackles around his ankles, like all the prisoners. You get this moment where he kind of goes into one of the little huts. He comes back out. The shackles are off. He sets them down, and you get sort of like the zoom in on the shackles. It's like, oh, look, he's taking them off now. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. I couldn't help but think, if this had been Stallone, you would have seen him take those shackles off. Like, it would have been like this moment of like, oh shit, he's getting ready to go kill some people. And I can't help but wonder if that was written that way. If that's something they wanted, and they were just like, we're just not getting it from Chuck. Like, he just looks like, I mean, he looks barely nonplussed throughout the whole movie. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and some of that, to their credit, I think they build the character that way. There's a lot of talk early on about how nothing ever phases you, man. Like, I'm just not tough like you. That Mazzilli character, like, totally. Big time plays that up. But, he's like this, like, stern, silent guy, I guess. But it doesn't always read that way. It kind of just reads like, he's just not got that chop of delivering, like, those feelings. And it would have been nice to see that moment of him taking the shackles off and, like, realizing, like, that's going to ramp up into your, like, third act killing spree. And then I did get confused by one thing, and that was there was a character, the guy who first had the gun pointed at him in the blank shot, who broke down after that soldier. Did he escape or get released at some point? Because he runs into Braddock in the woods after Braddock gets out. But I couldn't, for the life of me, I was like,
that's right. Yeah, I don't remember him getting...
How did he get there?
I don't remember him getting out.
Yeah.
He was the one they were putting the gun to his head, weren't they?
Yep, he was the original guy that went through that and really broke down after that. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I missed it. And
that's knows, a really during one of your naps. Yeah, no, I don't remember that. Was I don't remember that either. If anyone out there is a Missing in Action 2 scholar, please fill us in. Because I remembered the character when he showed up in the woods, but I was like, wait, why are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, I don't know. A few little things, story-wise, I think could have been helped out. I also think it's interesting looking at the two of the movies. Rambo does feel like you're in the middle of the damn jungle.
Yeah.
Not so much this movie. And that's not to say they didn't shoot it there, but it doesn't... it just doesn't, it doesn't have that same sort of lushness and I don't know, like the thickness of the surroundings. Are not quite as relevant, or that's not the right word. Not quite as visual in Missing in Action, and
sure,
that may be a product of the budget. I can forgive them that. Any favorite moments that we haven't talked about in this movie?
One of my favorite moments is his final line in the movie.
Oh, what was that? I don't even remember.
Wasn't his final line where? It was because it is kind of a one-liner, but as I remember it, it was a response to a line that he had said. I mean, a good 5 minutes before, where he's like he's going to beat up our bad guy, and he's like, "This is for the guys who didn't make it home," or something. And then they roll around on the ground for a little while, and then the next thing you see.
Oh, I remember now.
Is he's got? I mean, no. Wait a second. Did I fall asleep during the end of this movie?
Probably not. No,
because he's standing in front of the whole camp just by himself, and he says to absolutely no one. He says, "And this is for me." And he has a thing in his hand, and he presses a button, and everything goes up in flames. Where did he have the time? When did he set up a bunch of bombs? What happened?
Okay, so here's the thing. Like there actually is a Radio Shack like 4 miles away from this camp. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he went over there and got the circuits necessary, and then they make a little kit for remote control explosive devices. And so he just grabbed all that, and then boom, he set it up. I did love that. I mean, like, to me, it's one of those that I feel like that has been parodied a little bit just because of how he's facing foreground and does not even remotely turn to see the explosion behind him. Nope. But you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that line. It was a really good line. I actually really liked Colonel Yin had some great lines, I thought. And I thought that actor was okay, too. But there's a moment where I'm trying to think. There's a guy, Francois, who is basically his drug partner, his business partner on the narcotics side. And he comes in and out, brings them prostitutes because, Craig, if there's a woman in your movie about Vietnam, 99% chance she's going to be playing a prostitute, as we learn in this movie.
Absolutely.
And I think there was some were there prostitutes in Rambo? Can't remember.
Probably not. Another thing they missed.
Yeah, Jesus. Serious letdown. So Francois has a couple guys that work with him, but then at one point later on in the movie, those guys turn on him, and he's like, "What's going on?" And Colonel Yin says, "They're following me. They needed a new leader after they heard that you had died," and then they kill him. Oh, that's a pretty good line,
Sure.
I was like, "Boy, I didn't mind that. It was good."
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's a decent little bad guy there. Well, should we get back to our predictions? I think we've said that we preferred. You would agree, Missing in Action 2 is a more entertaining movie?
I think so. I mean, story-wise, it has more to go back to.
Yeah.
Like, once you see
it's
Rambo,
more satisfying.
You've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Totally agree. And then, I don't know. I think best one line, I think you're right. I think it's a draw. Like, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Do you give the edge to Norris because of that last line? Or was there something for Rambo that Stallone said that really satisfied that requirement?
I don't think Rambo had it. I don't think.
I don't either.
I don't think Rambo. I mean, Rambo had everything else but one-liners.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
I got to give that to Norris.
Okay. I did my absolute darndest to keep a body count between these two movies. Caveat being, there were times where it's really hard to tell because people are blowing up left and right, and there were times where you get a lot of just like explosions and then guys go flying through the air. When that happened, I'm like, they're probably dead, right? Unless I see them get up again. So so that was my criteria. It's just like, if it looks like they probably died, if I can ostensibly assume that they died, I'm gonna make a little notch. Yeah. Which movie do you think you had the bigger body count?
I think there's no question Rambo had the bigger body count.
No question. Absolutely right. It did substantially. By my count, it was, let me see here, 52 to 36.
Oh, wow.
And 52, that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot of dead people in one movie, especially like in Rambo, where, again, you don't really, there's like two Russian guys that you kind of have a sense who they are in that movie. Everybody else is just like, they're just nameless, faceless,
just like goons.
Asian guys getting shot. Yeah.
Well, and think about this. So, what do you say, 52?
52 to 36, yeah.
So, and that's the thing, too. 52 bodies hitting the floor in Rambo. One guy gets killed in First Blood. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Something to think about. You got to check that one out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense as to why then Rambo would become, a source for parody, even beyond sort of like what's on the screen. Because that is sort of like, how could you not look at that and go like, well, they just thought, let's make another one, but let's make it bigger and bloodier and kill more people, There was one chicken killed in Missing in Action 2. So I don't want to leave that out. That was kind of sad. But also, I do think Missing in Action again interspersed their killings a little more evenly. Rambo, again, nothing happened until 35 minutes in. And it's only an hour and a half movie. So you got 52 bodies in an hour.
Yeah.
That is substantial.
It's a body a minute.
That is no joke.
Yeah.
So if you're into that, you got to put this movie at the top of your list, right?
Absolutely.
Any surprises from either of these two movies that we haven't discussed?
Not that I can think of. I feel like I pretty much got what I was going in for.
I think so too, in a lot of ways. I'm surprised by how much they had in common. There's a lot there that's just like thematic and story overlap. And I'm a little surprised that Rescue Dawn is the only other movie I can think of since then. And I'm sure there's others that I just can't think of. That kind of gets into this subject matter a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's really interesting. And sad.
Yeah, for sure. Very, yeah.
It's ripe for action and it's ripe for drama,
Absolutely.
Unless you're Trump, and then you're just not impressed.
No.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
That's where we're at. Oh, I know we talked a little bit about Canon, the makers of Missing in Action 2, and that fantastic documentary that's out there about them, and what a crazy story that was. Rambo was produced by Carolco, right? Carolco?
Yes.
And that's an interesting studio as well. If you haven't read anything about that one, you should definitely look into that because there's a pretty fascinating story behind it. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up that we didn't get to last week was apparently there was a movie left on the table that Carolco was hoping to make, starring Stallone, called Bartholomew versus Neff, which was going to be a comedy directed by John Hughes, of all people.
Oh,
and
right.
would co-star John Candy. There's nothing in my brain that is capable of imagining what the hell that would have looked like.
That would have been nuts.
And I've never heard mention of that movie before, but it feels like one of those, like, you got to add it to the list of, like, amazing things that didn't get made.
Yeah.
Because that would have been fascinating. But, Carolco also huge hit with this. They did Terminator 2. I mean, they kind of roped in Stallone and Schwarzenegger around this era. Also, they had the rights to Spider-Man for a little bit. And so, that's another one that maybe could have happened with them and would have looked way different, I think, than any of the versions that have been made. So, I don't know. If you're a big Spider-Man fan, maybe you breathe a sigh of relief that it didn't happen. But then, they kind of got gut punched by, a string of bombs from Cutthroat Island and Showgirls, which kind of put the death knell in Carolco at the time, although they had been resurrected as a brand, although it doesn't look like they've made anything yet. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's interesting to see how these studios and production companies pop up like that and have these huge moments and then don't last,
True.
It makes you look at the studios and maybe think they know what they're doing. I also think, on that note, both of these movies that we talked about today, again, good example of the fact that doing franchises is not anything new. I think it's easy to feel sort of like fatigue with some of the franchises and sequels today. But, and here they were in 85 going strong and being successful. And obviously there were more movies that came down the line for both of these franchises, which I have not seen and which I would like to see. Indeed. Have you seen Rambo 3?
Man, no. I think I've only seen... I know what it's supposed to be about, but the poster for Rambo 3 always set me off of it a little bit because it just looks like Stallone is kind of like, all right, I'll do another one of these.
It looks like a cartoon. I mean, like he looks so like superhero-ized.
Oh yeah,
his muscles.
Well, he's gigantic, and you have like tiny helicopters flying around him. You're like, all right. So no, I've never watched it. Could be better. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm the same with that. I haven't seen the 2008 movie either. I heard that was pretty intense and pretty good actually.
Yeah.
And then on the missing in action side, have you seen any more of those? Braddock Part 3.
I believe I've seen the first one. I've never seen Braddock. No.
Well, apparently that one is about the one-man assault to free his wife and son who are still being held in the Vietnam prison camp. How the hell does the guy like end up with that many people?
Yeah.
He gets held in a camp. He leaves the camp. He goes back. He has a wife and a son. I mean, that may be stretching my my willingness to go along with.
How do they keep ending up back in those camps?
My God, I know. Who knows? Maybe we'll see another Braddock movie down the line.
Let's hope so.
Norris rides off into the sunset. I had a blast watching these two movies. I really think, like you said, they're kind of lean and mean. They're easy to digest and have fun with. And I'm psyched to get into the ones we're going to do next.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Because we're just barely gleaming the cube here, folks. I mean, there's so many more good stuff.
This cube is, going to be so gleamed.
Don't even know what that means, but it's fun to say.
It is.
Come back next time. We'll tee up what we're going to do again. And then, I don't know, you want the last words tonight, Craig?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? This one's for me, Shawn. And then there's a huge explosion.
This is for me.